Thank you. So you can't get everything right, really, can you? As that person said in that film, sometimes the magic works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay. This is the 7th week that we've been doing on the subject of harmony. And we've been doing the subject of harmony really because we've got these wonderful musicians coming. We've got one more week to go and one more week of the musicians. So we've been looking at harmony, and over the last 7 weeks, we've pretty much touched all the bases. That you have to create harmony within you. That the universe is pretty much in harmony. That the way we connect with harmony is through the present moment. And we have to see, which way the wind is blowing and then do the most loving thing. These are all ways, over the last 7 weeks, that I've talked about, how to have harmony in your life. And that most of the disharmony in the world is man-made. And so pretty much right now, up to now, we've been down the line spiritually. I mean, you couldn't really, all the stuff that I've come up with is pretty sort of obvious stuff. And, modern spirituality would have us understand those sorts of things. We've come up with all the ideas about bringing God into the world, about being conscious and all the stuff that we talk about in terms of spirituality here. And we've done all that thing. But today, I want to go beyond that. I want to look at how do we actually bring harmony into our world? How do we actually create harmony in a world so that it makes a difference? Because I think that's the real issue. How do we actually make that happen? And last week, I came up with 3 ideas about how we create harmony in the world. The first one was getting people to seriously answer the question, or ask the question, to seriously ask the question, how can we bring humanity to its senses, end war, and see the sharing of resources so that all humanity on the planet are cared for and looked after? I said, that's the first thing we have to do. We have to ask that question. And just leaning into that question puts us in the right direction. How can we bring humanity to its senses, end war, and see the sharing of resources so that all humanity on the planet are cared for and looked after? That's number 1. Number 2, I said that what we should do is develop an understanding of unity of consciousness and the interconnectedness of all things. And if that understanding began to become more prevalent, it would spread throughout social media and global consciousness that the world's developed over the last century. So that's the second one. I think the idea of unity of consciousness is an important idea. The third idea that I had last week was to vote. That democracy arrived 2,500 years ago in Greece and is a part of the evolution of consciousness that began over the last 300,000 years. And with democracy, humanity realized that the will of the people, the collective will of the collective people, brings advances in civilization, like the abolition of slavery, like racial equality, like human rights. They've come through the democratic progress, and it is through the democratic progress that harmony will come about. And, I'm not talking about any specific, but I just say, find people that are really into what we're talking about here and vote for them. But I think there's a fourth way. And this fourth way is what I want to talk about today. And I want to begin with science. Would you believe it? So I've got 2 short films that I want to show. They are short. They're not longer than a minute. And it's this bit of science that I want to start the conversation with.
Everyone in the world is made up of nothingness. While that may sound grim, it's the truth. In fact, everyone currently on Earth, all 7.6 billion of us, we could all fit into the room you're in right now. The entire human race, every single person, we could all be compressed into a single solid cube with the equivalent size of a sugar cube, all because we're made up of nothingness. What we perceive as solid objects like desks, chairs, cars, even ourselves, they're actually just a big conglomeration of tiny particles separated by what is practically infinite nothingness. This absurd truth has everything to do with atoms. Everything that has mass and occupies a given amount of volume is rudimentarily defined as matter. Everything around us is made up of matter, and even further, everything around us is made up of atoms. Atoms make up everything, but they also exist very, very far apart, and atoms themselves are more void than they are matter. Every atom has a nucleus surrounded by electrons. If the nucleus of the average atom was the size of a peanut, the entire atom would be the size of a baseball field. Around the edges of that stadium exist the electrons, the numbers of which vary by different elements. As a general rule of thumb, nuclei are about 100,000 times smaller than the atoms that they are housed in, making them practically empty space. When you start to consider that atoms are 99% empty space and they make up 100% of the universe, you can start to see you're made up of nothingness.
Okay, so I want to start with that the material world is made up of 99.99% space. We may feel that we're solid. We may feel that the world is solid, but it's an illusion. It's really space. Here's another way of putting it.
This is Cambridge University in England, where Ernest Rutherford, Niels Bohr, and other famous physicists did scientific research. Imagine a single atom the size of this courtyard.
If we think of that being the size of an atom, then the size of the nucleus will only be 1 millimeter in diameter. That's a bit smaller than this little grain of sand that I've got in my hand here. In other words, what it means is atoms are essentially empty space.
Now, how can we reconcile that with the fact that matter is matter, and my hands don't go through one another? Well, that's crazy, because if it's mostly empty space, they should pass right through one another. But what we understand now is, in fact, the reason my hands don't go through one another is that while the space is empty, what it's filled with is really electric fields.
When the electrons come within a very small distance of each other, they begin to repel each other, and that's why things appear to be solid when they are actually not. Now, you may think that I'm sitting on this chair, but actually that's not true. I'm actually hovering over this chair 10 to the minus 8 centimeters over this chair because of the electrons of my body are repelling the electrons of this chair.
Okay. You may wonder where I'm going with this. And I will be testing you afterwards. There'll be a little exam afterwards. So, although it seems that we're solid all the way through, the reality is that we're not. We see this easily in the vastness of space as we look out into the sky. There is space all around, and then there are these tiny little objects, the stars, the planets, tiny in comparison to space and its existence. And the same is true within us. Although we rub against matter all the time, this is the electrons within each atom rubbing against and repelling the other atoms, and that gives us the illusion of solidity. You must say, really, come on, this is the truth of the situation, that we are made up of space. And when, in reality, it's pretty much space in there. If this chapel, the whole chapel, were an atom, the nucleus of the atom would be smaller than the tiny grain I've got in my hand. You get a sense of it. The nucleus of it is absolutely tiny. So in reality, we're made up of 99.99% space. Space is outside us, and there is space within us. And the solidness that we feel all about us is created by the illusion of electrons within the atoms repelling each other. So, how does that relate to creating harmony in the world? Well, what it means is that everything in the world is made up of space. In fact, the basic currency, the basic methods of exchange in the world is not matter, which is the currency that we normally deal with. The basic currency is space. That is what we are richest in. The poverty of our perception of the world is that we only see that which is 0.001% of what the world is made up of. And we formulate all our dealings on that basis. Everything is about the positioning of matter and our relationship to that matter and other matter. The solidity of our bodies, the solidity of other people's bodies. We deal in the currency of that solidity as we rub up against others in the same way that electrons in atoms rub up against and create that solidity. All our dealings are about matter. And it's because of this that we create disharmony. Electrons repelling each other. Our physicality repelling other physicalities in terms of individuals or groups of individuals, just as atoms and groups of atoms repel each other. The idea of us being made of 99.99% of space. Now, this is important. The idea that we are 99.99% of space is an incredibly recent insight. It's not one that was available to humanity before the last century. It just didn't figure anywhere. It's completely new information. And given that, what if we didn't concentrate on matter, what if we didn't concentrate on matter, but instead concentrated on space? When we think of ways of creating harmony in the world, it seems impossible. It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You just know it's not going to work. When you think, I'm going to create harmony in the world. When I put out a subject like, how do we create harmony in the world? You just know it's just not going to work. You just have to look at history. And then we come up with ways of arranging society that we think would allow more harmony. Banning the bomb, socialism, capitalism, ethnic cleansing, open borders, closed borders, locking up criminals, killing people, utopian ways of doing things, dystopian ways of doing things. They're all different kinds of ideas of dealing with matter that might create more harmony. But it never does. But the one thing we are rich in, the one thing that the universe is rich in, is not this material aspect. It is space. What if our purpose in life was not to deal with the material, but to deal with the space? What if our transactions were about space rather than matter? And in doing that, we worked at creating space in the world around us. That what we're meant to do is not focus on creating matter, but focus on creating space. Creating the one thing that we're infinitely rich in, space. The one thing that's there. We know it's within us. Science tells us. What if that's what we're supposed to create? What we're supposed to do is to create space. I'm suggesting that by creating space, we're able to create harmony in the world. And we all know how to create space. I'm doing that right now. I'm creating, hopefully, the space for understanding. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not using my material body to force your material body to do things in a certain way. No. What I'm doing is holding space so that whatever you can come up with in your understanding, whatever you need in order to be able to live your lives more skillfully, that can happen. I'm creating space for that to happen. Now, although it may sound a bit obscure, the fact is we do all know how to create space. It's by not imposing oneself on others, matter against matter. It's by having the understanding of what is needed for what or whoever we're creating space for, in order for them to be able to grow into the best they can grow into. And, we've got teachers here, they know how to create space. Each of us knows instinctively what to do. We know how to create space for our children. We know how to create space for our friends when they're in difficulty. For our animals, we know how to create space when they're in need. We know how to create space. What I'm saying here is that to create harmony in the world, the skill we need to be able to use is to create space for those who need it, for them to realize how to live their lives more harmoniously. We don't have to force situations into harmony, which is to operate on the material realm. We have to create the space where the natural harmony that exists in everything is able to come through. And for me, this works on a number of levels. From a science perspective, we are basically made of space, and therefore it is natural that we offer to the world that which we are richest in, which is space. To give space is to give that which is needed for growth, be that on a personal level, on a community level, and also on an international level. Instead of dealing with the material, which is only 0.001% of all that exists, we deal on the level of space that we are 99.99% made of. And there are endless ramifications around how giving space can create the harmony that we're looking for. I think it works on a material level, but also I think it works on a spiritual level. If you want to go into the spiritual understanding of this, you can see it's actually what people are talking about in the different spiritualities. When Jesus says, the kingdom of God does not come from your careful observation, as Louisa read, nor do people say, here it is or there it is, the kingdom of God is within you. What is 99.99% within you? Space. The kingdom of heaven is therefore the space between things. It is also the space within things. And you can cash that out in the whole spirituality of the kingdom of heaven by looking at it in terms of space. It also fits with the Buddhist concept of nothing. The famous stanza in the Dhammapada, the sayings of the Buddha. It is not good comfort that helps you on your way, nor ritual, nor book learning, nor withdrawal into the self, nor deep meditation. None of these confer mastery and joy. O speaker, O seeker, rely on nothing until you want nothing. Rely on nothing until you want nothing. That nothing is the space between things. That nothing is the space within things. That nothing is what we seek in meditation. It is the no thoughts, the space between our thoughts that we are attempting to arrive at. It is also in the Tao Te Ching. These are all descriptions of space before humanity knew that it was 99.99% space. Look and it can't be seen. Listen and it can't be heard. Reach and it can't be grasped. Above it isn't bright, below it isn't dark. Seamless, unnameable, it returns to the realm of nothing. Form that includes all form. Image without an image, subtle beyond all conception. Approach it and there is no beginning. Follow it and there is no end. You can't know it, but you can be it, at ease with your life. Just realize where you come from. This is the essence of wisdom. It is the great secret hidden in plain sight, the nothingness of space. And when we offer the world that no thing, when we offer the world space, it creates space for the world to heal itself. It is only when we try to prescribe what is to be done that conflict arises. When you offer space, then most of the time, the healing is able to come through. And we know that in our own experience of life. We just know this. And I think this works in all situations on a personal level. When we're given space, then things turn around. On a community level, on an international level. And that's not just to say you just roll over. When someone commits a crime, then you need to give them space to realize the antisocial nature of that crime. And that might mean prison. But when you're giving space, it might be that the prison system is very different to the way that it is now. You are creating a space. It's not saying, oh, nothing. On that level, it's saying, no, I'm creating a space. It is true nothing rather than the something of punishment or the something of this or the something of that. It is true nothing. In international relations, when you give space, you create the space that, we're going to go back to it, but that Viktor Frankl talks about. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's how it works. In our space, in that space, lies our power to choose our response. And in that response lies our growth and our freedom. We have to create the space in ourselves in order to be able to create the space for others. And, there is no prescribed way that you do this. It is about having the attitude and understanding that in order to have healing on any level, we have to create the space for it to happen, rather than force it to happen in some way. It is an attitude of giving space. It is a campaign to have people understand that space is what needs to be created in all situations, not friction, in order for there to be progress. And I think these words, this works on its own level in that there's a pretty common understanding that creating space is a good thing. It is foundational to all therapy, to all relationships, including marriage. I love that passage from Khalil Gibran's stanza on marriage. And he speaks of space. He says, this is about marriage. I read this when I marry people. It's a good one to, they say, what should we have read? And I always pull this out. And this is just a bit of it, it's not all of it. You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days, and you shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of heaven dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. More space. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another your bread, but eat not of the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. More space. Even as the strings of the lute and the guitar are alone when they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, space, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow, space. It is about creating space. It is what the universe is rich in. It is what you are rich in. It is what you have to give in life. Yet we only see the 0.001%, which is material. It is time that we invested in the 99.99% that we're rich in and share it with others so that they too see the riches of the ocean of the space of which they too are a part. Thank you. So, I want to know what you think of this idea about space, giving space being an absolutely crucial aspect. Any thoughts? Anyone disagree? Anyone want to make a comment? Yeah, let's start with Diane, and then we'll have Bruce after that.
How does personal will fit into that?
I think you have to have the personal will in order to give space. I mean, for me, to be
Make
with
your decision.
you have to make a decision to give space. That is a decision. It's not something that occurs naturally, I think. Thank you. Yeah. Bruce.
Well, a book I could recommend is a recent one by David Brooks, who's always preoccupied with trying to just boost pro-social skills, in the citizen, the society. And it's called How to Know a Person. And he talks about basically if you are a wonderful listener and you're a thoughtful, sort of helpful questioner, people light up. And then if you choose, you may even sort of figure out how to do something together, sort of synergize, collaborate, if you will. That's limited by what common ground you can find, and also the least capable skills as far as moving together. Now, the great illuminator might say, well, who's going to illuminate me? And the answer is no one. You're so mature that you can just have the joy of altruism and helping co-create, happy, win-win kind of situations. And so rather than sort of taking a top-down solution to why we have a loneliness epidemic in the United States, he's taking sort of a bottom-up. How can we proactively sort of create sort of a spreading circle of harmony and positive results?
Thank you, Bruce. Creating space. What do you think? Yes, Andy.
We were listening to Eckhart Tolle the other day, and he was asked a question about his shift when he shifted from his physical self to living his spiritual self. And he said he had a realization that he didn't have to think if he didn't want to think. And I think that's an amazing, because like you're saying, it is a choice, and I never really thought of thinking as a choice like that before I heard the quote, but that obviously would create space, just not thinking.
Yes. Thank you. Good. Yes, Diane.
Can I ask here, when we're talking about space, would you say that's analogous to essence?
I don't know. I mean, I'm liable to go off on this for another whole course. If you're not,
right?
if you don't dissuade me today, the next course is about creating space. Is essence, and I think space is analogous to the kingdom of heaven. I think what our essence, fundamentally, yes, our essence is therefore space. Yeah, I think that's right. And that we are manifestations. That idea that Diane is the universe made conscious of itself, that idea that we bang on endlessly about, is space, the 0.001% of the universe that comes through space manifesting Diane. So yes, I think you're right. But I hadn't thought about it. I think that's good, yeah. Yes, Tom. I warn you, unless I am dissuaded from this, I'm going to go off on one till, yeah, go on.
I have more thoughts than I have time for right now.
Oh,
but,
good. No, we
No, just a few. What Heather quoted, I think you said Sufi, about cleansing the lens of perception.
Yeah.
Was quite fascinating to me. And regarding space, I think that below the surface of that is there's such a powerful, fundamental pivot in the wheel requirement for connection that if you have space and electrons holding you apart, you desire, you yearn for connection.
Yeah.
whether within yourself, with others, within the cosmos. And back to the lens that Heather mentioned, I think it was last week when there was the bass players, I think they were playing Dvorak's New World.
That's right.
And it happens to be one of my few favorites. I don't like to say what is a favorite because I have a lot, but that one resonates, especially because it is new. It is something of creation. And after you talked about harmony, disharmony last week, and I was in that space and listening to Dvorak, I happened to go into the space around the lens because I have an issue with my eyes, beginnings of cataracts, and I went to that focal point of the lens as an opportunity to dissolve film, separation, to dissolve disconnection and create connection. And one of my thoughts was that I'm exploring is, can I connect with that active creation around what is the frequency that pre-exists around healing things like even a cataract, which is a material thing. How can I dissolve it? And I just went into a creative space, which whether I do that or not, actually, will from here on inform my connection within myself, with others, and within the cosmos to create choices, to create options, but to seek frequencies of alignment with the outcome I'm seeking. And I think that there's this dance between space and connection, just like there is between yin and yang, between disconnection and connection. It's all a dance, and it's all a series of options. And that's where, to me, that's where spirituality lies.
Thank you. Yes, Drew.
So I think I'm going to tee up a chapter in your inquiry and your developing this. It seems very clear, kind of this, the atoms in the nucleus, space and material is very analogous to the material world and the spiritual world. And so it's like how to focus on the space and give that in a material world. For example, the war, and we see that in Ukraine of the crashing of material against the crashing of material.
Very good.
And so to then deal with that in a way that, is constructive and does engage somehow is a question.
Yes, it is a question. That is the question. I don't know how one does that, but it is, if we start from the concepts that you've outlined there, then we might arrive at somewhere where there is an understanding of how to do that. But it is the big question.
Just answer that in your foregoing chapters, okay?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you give me the space to do that.
I just wanted to respond to what you said, Diane, just about will. Like, where does our will show up in all of this? And I'm just feeling the difference between willfulness and willingness, and I think that's a really interesting question for us to explore. Like, where are we being willful and strident and insistent on a certain outcome versus where are we willing? Hands open love. Where are we willing? Just willing and giving space. And then the other thing I just wanted to say was just that line from Khalil Gibran. I mean, here we are with a guitar today, to think of each, just like when we next listen to you playing, just to pay attention to the strings and to them quivering, like that bit from Khalil Gibran. Just watch the strings quivering and see how they're dancing together and creating the music. I think we've got an amazing opportunity to do that today.
Thank you. Yes.
Just feeling, using your word, Heather, the willingness and how different it feels in your body. It just feels lighter and open, and you can feel the space. And thank you very much for allowing that very cool shift.
Thank you. And you can feel the space. Just in this moment. There's a potentiality for anything to happen, anything to come forth. And the willingness for healing on all sides here in this room is an amazing willingness. And this is what we're wanting to create, the willingness to give the space for people, if they need to be able to scream. My mother always used to say, you know, how do I deal with this? I'd say, just hold her tiny hand and let her rage. Sometimes you just have to do that. Great. Well, we may have more of this. We will have more of this.